The Galaxy Z Fold 4 has been out for a while now, and I actually got mine about maybe a week before it came out. At least I think I did, and maybe I'm crazy, I don't remember. I did get it before it did come out though. I was actually going to wait one more month to actually do this review, but I actually do feel confident enough to share my experiences with this device and tell you if it's one you should consider or if it's one you should skip. So with that being said, let's go right ahead into this review. The Z Fold 3, as some of you might know, was my first foldable device, and I was actually pretty impressed with the design at the time. What I didn't know is that I'd be more impressed with the subtle design changes Samsung made to the Z Fold 4. The slimmed down hinge and trimmed left bezel make this phone feel closer to something like the Galaxy S22 or even something like the Z Flip 4, which are both more on the traditional side of candy bar phones. The cover screen still isn't as wide as those devices, but at least it makes for a little less of an awkward feeling when using it since Samsung has widened its aspect ratio. It's now wide enough to make things like swiping on a keyboard feel comfortable or even doing something like a quick reading. Using the inner display more or less feels the same as it did on the Z Fold 3, which is not to say that it was bad on the Z Fold 3, but one refinement that makes a difference is the fact that the under display camera is now hidden better than it was on the Z Fold 3. You can definitely still tell it's there and see it, but you really have to be looking for it to actually annoy you or even to be significant in any way. If you've seen some of my other videos, you'll know that I had a particular issue with the Z Fold 3 when it came to the installed screen protector on it. This doesn't seem to be the case with the Z Fold 4, and on top of that, that issue with the Z Fold 3 actually happened first in really cold weather. Well, the fact of the matter is I have moved to a place with even colder weather, and we've actually hit some temperatures below zero, and as you can see here, this screen protector has no signs of coming off. Now, this was something I was actually worried about and part of the reason why I was thinking about doing this review a little bit later, but it has not happened, and it did happen on my Z Fold 3 a lot quicker. So I can say that this is also an improvement to this display and one that I'm happy for. The cover screen this device uses still doesn't have the highest resolution, but that resolution has been bumped up slightly. I can say that I do enjoy this resolution upgrade even if it is a slight one. It just seems like this display has more clarity to it overall, and I do find myself using it more than I did on the Z Fold 3. One issue I did have with the Z Fold 3's display is its max brightness. I can't tell you off the top of my head right now what the max brightness is for this cover screen on the Z Fold 4, but I can say that it does have an increased perceived brightness, as Samsung mentioned. I also find that I can use this display even in direct sunlight, although that can still sort of be difficult depending on how much sunlight there is. The one thing that still does irk me is the fact that I can't use the S Pen on this display. I understand that it isn't a normal size display, but there's a level of consistency you just don't get because the cover screen doesn't use this S Pen at all. It can't even detect it when writing on it and doesn't even know it's there. Now, I don't write intricate notes all of the time. However, I don't really want to have to always open this display, basically figure out how to hold the phone securely in my hand and then take my simple notes. The main display is really better for me when writing more intricate notes, and I would just like to see Samsung have that additional functionality of being able to write on the main display here. And as you can see, once again, even though S Note is up here and I just wrote that little note, doesn't work at all. The main display has also had its resolution up slightly, but honestly, I can say it hasn't made much of a difference here. I'm not actually trying to say this or paint this in a bad light, but I will say that the experience is very similar to what you would see on the Fold 3, which I had no problems with as far as clarity. The Fold 4 still continues to be the best enhanced way to do things like watch videos, read emails, type up a Word document, and view all of the pictures I've taken this winter and just overall. The crease in the middle of the display has been made to look a little less jarring. Of course, you can still see it when looking head on, but personally, it doesn't bother me at all. You'll really be paying more attention to the content you're seeing on the screen anyway. It's just something that you'll have to get used to, but not in the annoying way. When it comes to performance, you probably would think that there'd be an issue since this phone has more hardware than an average one. But the processor inside of this device keeps it moving very smoothly. I do experience the occasional lag, but it's so rare that I don't even notice it's actually happening when it is happening. I recently received the Android 13 update and the same holds true. The Galaxy Z Fold 4 is a premium device and it acts like it. On the topic of the Android 13 update, it seems one of my biggest issues has been fixed. The issue I'm referring to is that some apps would not scale correctly when switching from the cover screen over to the main display. I took a look at the app that I used as an example before in one of my other videos, and it seems that the issue has been fixed here, so I'm going to assume that it has been fixed for all other apps as well. One issue that has not been fixed and still persists, however, is certain apps restarting when switching from the cover display to the main display. This normally wouldn't matter so much, but it can mean the difference between you starting something on the app you're using and it being erased once you open to the main display. I was actually hoping this would be fixed with Android 13, but it hasn't been. Notice here in this example how I'm typing out some text, and essentially when I open the cover screen, you'll see that that text has gone because the app has restarted. I really do hope that this actually does get fixed with future software upgrades. Pop-up window isn't new and has been on Galaxy phones forever, but it's so much more useful on this device because of how much space you get with the main display. I find myself watching videos and taking notes more frequently than I ever have on a non-foldable device. And the best part is I don't have to worry about making the pop-up window transparent just to see behind it. And these are just really to talk about my favorite features of using this main display. The best part about this is there really is no lag when doing this because, like I said before, the performance on this device is very solid. The Fold 4 has 5 different cameras, but not all of them were created equal. The front-facing camera, like most other front-facing cameras, will need some light to produce a picture at the highest quality possible, but there is also some post-processing added to these photos that will try to eke out as much detail as possible. I'm not saying that this camera is horrible, and you can definitely get away with some decent pictures in various lighting situations, but it is not the 40 megapixel camera that you would find on the S22 Ultra. The under display camera here is a different story. I find that even with an adequate amount of light and post-processing, these are photos you still most likely will not be putting anywhere like social media or even using for professional use. This camera is really best used for video calls on the main display, which is why it's there in the first place. Other than that, it's purely cosmetic and isn't something I use at all. As a matter of the fact, I wouldn't even mind if Samsung didn't include it at all on this display, because I personally do not intend to use my phone for video calls while it's open. Now, the rear cameras are a completely different story from the other two cameras I just mentioned. They may not have the same zoom capability as the S22 Ultra, but they're definitely no slouch at all. I personally think that I've taken some of my best pictures with the Z Fold 4, and having owned the S22 Ultra, I find that I don't miss having that 100 times zoom capability, and that the 50 megapixel camera on the Fold 4 is more than enough for my use cases. Now keep in mind, I am not saying these cameras are perfect at all, but I am willing to bet that anybody who uses these cameras will be satisfied with their output. What's even better is that the rear cameras on the Fold 4, like on the Fold 3, can be used to take selfies much more easily with the cover screen preview feature. If you're interested in seeing what the quality of the cameras on the Fold 4 are, I've actually put together a video of the best photos I've taken with the Fold 4 so far. I'll leave the link up here in the top right corner, and also as a recommended video at the end of this one and in the description if you're interested. Now, when it comes to Wi-Fi connectivity, I can say that I have not experienced any issues with dropouts or even unstable connection here. The connection is as solid as ever, and this is actually using Wi-Fi 6E, which is why you see here it says 1.2 gigabytes per second. I can't necessarily say the same for my Tab S8 Ultra because I am having some issues between the router and the tablet, so it's good that at least my phone can connect to it and have no issues. Bluetooth is also not an issue here. Anything that I have connected to this device via Bluetooth connects very speedily, very fast, and overall the connection is very stable. 5G actually continues to impress me. The speed is a little excessive, of course, but I am thankful that it exists if I ever need to go that fast one day while I'm outside. Maybe for something like a remote desktop or playing my game systems remotely. Of course, this all does hinge on whether I have a 5G connection or not, but from what I am reading, T-Mobile, my carrier, has been crushing it in the 5G race. I can't say that I use the speakers on my devices frequently, but I am pleasantly surprised with just how much quality the speakers on the Z Fold 4 do put out. I wouldn't say that they are the make-all, break-all, or the best thing in the world either, like mostly everything I've said in this review, but you can definitely get some quality out of them. Just take a listen to this example here. So as you've heard with that sample right there, this is a phone that is not necessarily built for media, but Samsung has definitely put some quality into those speakers, and if you're watching movies on this without Bluetooth headphones, I'm pretty sure those speakers will satisfy you. They do satisfy me whenever I do use them. Now, battery life on this device is something I can't say is either good or bad. I just really feel neutral about it. I can make it through a normal workday without having to charge, but I'm also around a charger constantly anyway. With my device configuration, I usually expect around 6 to 7 hours when I'm using my phone normally. What normal looks like for me is sending a couple of texts, watching YouTube videos with varying quality, checking emails constantly, using Google Maps, and checking my RSS feeds. Like I always say, battery life is something that's really kind of tough to give a solid answer on, but if you do the things I do every day on a constant basis, I would definitely say just expect that 6 to 7 hours. When it comes to charging, I usually charge wirelessly, or at least whenever I get the chance. When I do this for 15 minutes, I get about 9% of my battery back when charging on a 15-watt charger. When charging via cable and a 25-watt charging brick, I get about 23% back in the same 15-minute span. At least charging should be a little bit more solid, so the numbers I give you here should be what you actually can expect. So the last thing I want to give some attention to today is the S Pen experience with the Fold 4. Now, this is the case for the Fold 3. The problem with this case here was that my S Pen always kind of like slipped out. As you can see, it comes out pretty darn easily. I would often find that it's fallen out in my car and kind of like start freaking out like I lost this thing. But anyway, that was the S Pen experience here. Let's move that to the side. With the Fold 4, Samsung has sort of improved the experience. However, there is much that is left to be desired. Now, they've done this little sort of like hard case thing, and this is just one of the ways you can get the S Pen. You can also buy it separately. But my problem with this hard case, and I've reviewed this thing here, is that there's like adhesive material on the inside of it here, and as you can see, it's been ripped off. You can also see here that the adhesive has stayed on the side here, which is one of the most important things. However, it doesn't work anyway because of the fact that I've taken this case off so many times that particles have just got on it and weakened the integrity of the case. You can also see on the bottom here that the adhesive is gone. And the reason I'm talking about this or even making that point is because Samsung charges a pretty penny for this thing. I think it's like something like $90 with the S Pen. And that's just one part there. As you can see, it like flexes here. Now, the back cover that actually holds the S Pen is actually pretty sturdy. This part can be detached and replaced with a stand, or you can just kind of leave it with the S Pen like I did. Now, the S Pen does stay extremely secure here, and you know, that's a really, really great thing coming from the Z Fold 3 case, but my biggest gripe with the overall S Pen experience here is that you're paying for a phone that is well above $2,000, right? And a phone in Samsung's portfolio that is less expensive than this has the S Pen built in. This is something you got to buy separately, so it is another investment. Now, the other issue with this is that this S Pen has no air actions whatsoever. And it's not necessarily that I use them that much. However, they were pretty nice to have whenever I wanted them. What I'm really, really trying to get at here is that Samsung does need to improve the S Pen experience on foldable devices. Whether that is making a S Pen silo on the bottom of the device, or whether that is just kind of giving us an S Pen that has Bluetooth functionality that's not overly big like the S Pen Pro, it just needs to be improved. Now, I'm not saying that writing on the Fold series with an S Pen is the worst experience ever. It is really good to have an S Pen that, you know, you can really grip, and something that is a lot thicker and just a lot more usable than what you get on the S Pen on the inside. However, if I have to sacrifice functionality, I think I would really want that S Pen to be built inside. Maybe they could even sell this separately along with an S Pen you get in there, but you know, writing with it, yeah, it's a great experience. You can't use it on the cover screen like I mentioned before, but it does give you a large canvas to use anyway. And that was kind of my biggest gripe with the S Pen from like the Note series or anything else. I'm not going to be able to write on this because this S Pen actually doesn't work, but I could even see myself using this more comfortably because the screen is much bigger. But overall, yes, the S Pen experience is something I think will need to be upgraded, especially if you want Note users or die-hard, like really, really die-hard Note users, which I guess technically I was one of them, but I'm a little bit more flexible. If you want those kinds of users to be able to switch over to a foldable device, you need to give them everything they had before and not make them pay for it. To summarize all of this up, the Z Fold 4 is a device that has had minor changes made to its design that equate to a better overall in-hand experience. Of course, the cover display still needs to get bigger, but in this present time, it's fine. I really do hope that Samsung also adds the ability to use the S Pen on this display and does bump up the resolution. But really, if I did actually have to choose between two of these things, I would actually choose the S Pen compatibility over anything else personally. I still love using the main display, and I'm personally not that bothered by the crease anymore, but if they could either make it smaller or remove it entirely, I wouldn't complain at all, honestly. This device is definitely no slouch when it comes to performance, and I find that it's more than good enough to be used on a daily basis without being annoyed. I'm pretty sure this is in no small part to Android 13 and the chipset built in, even if it is old by now. The front-facing camera here will get the job done, and the same can be said about the under-display camera, although those photos are about as good as a phone from 1992. The only cameras I usually care about are the rear ones, and I think the Fold 4 definitely does a good job with photos and videos it takes with the rear cameras. If for some reason you find yourself needing or desiring the 108 megapixel or the 100 times zoom, then this is not the device you want to pick up. Audio performance from the speakers is solid and should be a bit better than most other phones out there, and the same can be said about Bluetooth audio. since that's as good as one would expect. Battery life does leave something to be desired, but I guess that's to be expected. It could always definitely be worse, of course. I'd like to see Samsung focus on making the battery life go all day beyond that 6 to 7 hour mark. And finally, the S Pen isn't terrible, but it also isn't fully featured either. I'd much rather have an S Pen that fits in the device and has all of the features that came with the S22 Ultra, rather than having one that, yes, is easier to grip, but is a lot less involved than just being able to take some notes. So that is all I really have to say about this Fold 4 here. Honestly, my experience with the Fold series has been luckily pretty good, starting with the Z Fold 3, and I do enjoy the experience more with the Z Fold 4, and it does make me excited for what's to actually come from Samsung. I am hoping that they do go ahead and make the changes I was talking about before, but I'm not holding my breath either. But with that being said, wherever you are in the world, have a good day, a good afternoon, a good evening, or a good night, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.